And now to get this official program started with our keynote address from our New Jersey State Treasurer, Treasurer Elizabeth Maher Muoio. Her bio and more details can be found with the QR code and all the bios from all the panelists on the agenda at your table. But Treasurer Muoio has been the State Treasurer for the entire Murphy administration. And as I like to tell the Treasurer any chance I have to see, obviously BIA and taxpayers don't always agree with everything coming out of Treasury, but I think it's one of the more well-run organizations and entities within state government. BIA and taxpayers know that there's accessibility, there's transparency, and there's good work and good resources coming out of Treasury that make this state. It's not always easy to operate businesses here, but Treasury is doing all they can to make it easier. So we thank you for that. Treasurer Muoio has a long track record of working on fiscal economic issues in the State Assembly, in Mercer County, and leading there and making a difference there for Mercer County residents, for state residents, and now obviously leading Treasurer under the Murphy administration and doing a fantastic job and being a great partner to businesses, taxpayers, all the residents of the state. So thank you very much, Treasurer. Look forward to hearing from you about all the good things that we're happy about in the Murphy administration budget.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everybody. And I apologize, I forgot to take my Claritin this morning, it's been a brutal week for anybody who has allergies. And thank you for inviting me to speak today. It's been an exciting year and one that saw the New Jersey continue the remarkable economic turnaround that began 2 years ago. As you all know, in March 2020, our world was thrown into chaos as we faced a public health crisis unlike any we'd ever witnessed. Admittedly, it was a scary time, in addition to an unpredictable virus that was overwhelming our state's public health system. We were faced with soaring unemployment, a tumbling GDP, plummeting revenues, and economic forecasts that painted a daunting picture of the years to follow. In those months, following the governor's announcement of the public health emergency, I dare say nobody inside the administration would have envisioned that our fiscal health would be as stable as it is as I stand here today. But as I said in my budget testimony last month, those economic shock waves we experienced 3 years ago and the sharp recession that followed were largely offset by a strong recovery. By mid-2022, New Jersey had gained back all the jobs lost in the spring of 2020. Indeed, we have recovered over 110% of those pandemic employment losses, above our regional peers. And our 3.5% unemployment rate has dropped back to pre-pandemic levels and is lower than our surrounding states. The state's GDP and personal income in 2022 grew at rates equal to or higher than many of our neighbors, and our tax revenues rocketed past pre-pandemic levels. In fact, our GDP growth in 2022 ranked us 13th in the nation. These realities have allowed us to make important investments that have propelled us along a fiscally responsible path and enabled us to fund the critical programs and services that, instead of the calamity many expected in the post-pandemic economy, will position New Jersey residents, communities, and businesses for future prosperity. In late February, the governor unveiled his budget proposal, which for the third year in a row includes a full pension payment. 3 straight years of full pension payments is a feat not accomplished in more than a quarter of a century. With the FY 2024 payment, this administration will be responsible for nearly 3/4 of all contributions to the pension system since 1995. In the past 3 years, we have included more than $20 billion to fully fund the pension system, including a record $7.086 billion in the recently proposed budget. And the pension is not the only area in which we've made record payments. This year, we've proposed significant increases in school funding, reaching step 6 of 7 in the S2 school funding formula that was created in partnership between the governor and legislature, and providing a record amount of direct aid for our schools. The $10.75 billion proposed in this budget represents a $2.6 billion increase since FY 2018, more than 30% in K-12 funding. The budget also introduced, also proposes a second full year of funding for the extremely successful and impactful Anchor Property Tax Relief Program. In its first year, over 1.75 million renters and homeowners participated in the program, and in fact, most eligible taxpayers who applied have already received their anchor benefit, either by check or direct deposit. The governor's proposed budget provides $2 billion to fund year 2 of this program, and we're hoping to build off of the year 1 success and reach even more eligible homeowners and renters next year. Making these important investments has not precluded us from preparing for the future. The proposed budget continues to prepare for what most economists believe is a slowing economy with a record $10 billion surplus. We understand that spending the money earmarked for surplus is enticing, particularly when there are many worthy requests. But for those who might question the level of surplus, I'd point out that according to data from the most recent fiscal survey of states from the National Association of State Budget Officers, or NASBO, the national average for state surpluses is 24.7% of spending, and the median is 26.9%. Our proposed $10 billion surplus would put New Jersey at 18.9%. We're comfortable with this level of surplus, and we believe it's necessary to help us weather any coming storms. And we're not the only ones who believe a strong surplus is necessary to our state's well-being. Wall Street has clearly noticed and credited our level of preparedness as a major factor behind the upgrades issued by the 3 major credit rating agencies in the past month. Each rating agency pointed to the surplus as a major factor in their upgrade. And conversely, a lack of surplus was a factor in many of the downgrades that took place before Governor Murphy took office. The 3 recent upgrades follow upgrades from each agency last year, which included S&P's first upgrade of New Jersey since 2005 and Moody's first upgrade of the state since 1977. Together, these actions have brought New Jersey's bond rating back to levels not seen in nearly a decade. So let me turn now and provide a little more detail on our FY24 proposed budget, starting briefly with the revenue forecast that I delivered to the legislature last month. As those of you who tuned in heard, all 3 of you out there, we noted FY23 revenue growth exceeded expectations during the first half of the fiscal year, as the revenue slowdown that we had anticipated held off for about 6 months. Our $54.1 billion revised forecast is $3.7 billion above the level certified in the Appropriations Act last June. This reflects solid year-to-date collections during the first half of the fiscal year and a slowdown for the remainder of the year. For FY24, the governor's proposed budget forecasts revenue stabilizing at $53.8 billion, with growth of approximately 2.3% in GIT and 1% in sales tax, together with a decline in CBT of approximately 7.3% for reasons we'll discuss later. But there are economic uncertainties looming as higher U.S. interest rates continue to affect the housing market, consumers, and the banking industry. As I testified last month, we saw revenue growth slow this winter, and we are expecting a weaker spring tax filing compared to last year. As you all know, April is critically important for revenues, and we will be providing an updated forecast to the legislature in May once we have had a chance to review final payments. Now, in building the FY24 proposed budget, we're guided by 3 pillars that have been at the forefront of Governor Murphy's economic plan since his first year in office: affordability, responsibility, and opportunity. This budget addresses affordability through significant tax relief, through an $832 million increase in direct K-12 school aid, and through critical investments in preschool and higher education funding. And I'd like to give a shout out here to NJBIA for its recognition in your budget testimony last month of the fact that these investments in education fall under the NJBIA category of pro-growth spending, and that they not only provide property tax relief, but they are important investments in workforce development. So I want to thank you for noting that. The proposed budget promotes responsibility by increasing the surplus, offering another record-setting full pension payment of over $7 billion, and continued focus on debt reduction with the proposed deposit of an additional $2.35 billion into the Debt Defeasance and Avoidance Fund, a fund created in an effort to reduce the state's bonded debt through defeasance and limiting the creation of new debt by providing for pay-go funding. In total, including the recommended FY23 deposit, over $11 billion will have been deposited into this fund. In partnership with the legislature, this administration, through defeasance, has been able to erase over $3 billion of the state's bonded debt and save future taxpayers $1.2 billion in avoided debt service costs. In addition, almost $3.5 billion has been allocated to capital projects that would otherwise have required the issuance of new debt. And this budget expands opportunity and promotes economic growth with proposals like the Urban Investment Fund, the Boardwalk Fund, new resources to help promote the green economy, and building upon last year's investment in the Affordable Housing Production Fund. Governor Murphy has remained steadfast in his efforts to build a stronger and fairer economy in New Jersey. His record on economic growth is built on unwavering support for small businesses and inclusive growth within a framework that encourages innovation and competitiveness. The result has been remarkably low unemployment, strong personal and business incomes, robust state tax revenues, and a 26% increase in new filings for creation of high-propensity businesses, which are those with the high likelihood of hiring multiple employees, since 2018. If you look at the proposed budget, you'll notice that it builds on the successful economic development programs of recent years. First, by renewing funding at $50 million for the Main Street Recovery Program, New Jersey's flagship small business support program that was launched at the start of COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to providing over $800 million in support to small businesses during the pandemic, the EDA has aided more than 1,500 small businesses across the state with a host of small business programs, the Small Business Improvement Grant, Small Business Lease Grant, and Micro Business Loan Programs, and provided additional assistance through targeted programs to small businesses in key sectors such as restaurants, childcare, and manufacturing. Illustrating the administration's success in encouraging equitable growth, more than a third of improvement and lease grants have been awarded to minority-owned businesses. As mentioned earlier, the governor's proposed budget proposes the creation of a boardwalk fund that would help repair and renovate the seaside byways that are so emblematic of the Jersey Shore. The state would combine federal SFRF funds, local contributions, and private capital to make the critical investments needed to enhance climate resiliency along the shore and help the state's tourism industry bounce back stronger after the pandemic. The '24 budget also proposes an innovative new urban investment fund, which will use federal SFRF dollars to revitalize urban areas where shifting patterns of work and commuting since the pandemic have reduced foot traffic and created ongoing challenges to community vitality. Grants from the fund would be flexible and responsive to the needs of cities and could include arts and cultural investments, beautification projects, public safety and streetscape improvements, and investments in pedestrian spaces and new open space. The fund could also provide dollars to reimagine the use of now underutilized office space. The governor would propose a specific set aside for Atlantic City to improve public safety, rebuild distressed housing, and provide other social services. Since his first year in office, boosting the innovation economy has been integral to the governor's economic development strategy. Increasing awareness and use of the EDA's financing tools, such as the Net Operating Loss Program, which helps capitalize early-stage life science and tech businesses, and the Angel Investor Tax Credit, which is driving significant increases in angel investing in New Jersey, shows how the public sector can effectively nurture the startup sector. Similarly, the EDA's Strategic Innovation Centers program supports a strong pipeline of transformative projects, including the HACS Global Headquarters in Newark. The governor has proposed $50 million for this initiative in FY24. In December, the Film and Television Commission reported that total spending by production companies in the Garden State grew by 647% between 2018 and 2021, hitting a record of $500 million and creating over 5,500 jobs in 2021. This growth has been enabled by the film and digital media tax credit that the governor revived. Adding a studio component to the incentive has drawn huge interest in the film community, and New Jersey is poised to become a major hub of movie and television activity in the coming years. Advancing the work of the Wealth Disparity Task Force, the governor has proposed spending $6 million this year on initiatives that would increase supply chain diversity and that help interested businesses form employee stock ownership plans, which give their workers the chance to share in the benefits of business ownership. Governor Murphy is also proposing a social impact investment fund. Inspired by the work of the Public Bank Implementation Board, this fund would be seeded with $20 million in state dollars and seek to further leverage that money with private social impact investments. The fund, which would be established by legislation, would create a flexible and innovative mechanism to deliver below-market rate loans, guarantees, or similar financial tools to advance socially beneficial projects and programs. The fund will initially focus on expanding the state's ability to address water infrastructure needs in vulnerable communities and support affordable housing development. And finally, two items that are last but certainly not least for all of you here in this room and listening. The governor's budget also assumes that the temporary 2.5% corporation business surtax, which was extended at the start of the pandemic when the state's financial future was uncertain, will sunset on schedule at the start of 2024, pursuant to Public Law 2020, Chapter 95. And as I know you will be discussing later this morning, the administration will also continue to work with its partners in the legislature to enact revenue-neutral corporation business tax reforms that, among other changes, will reduce the rate for global intangible low-tax income, or GILTI, and adopt the Finnegan method for combined reporting. As I've said repeatedly, we all recognize there's more work to be done. And as the governor is fond of saying, we are not spiking the football, or more appropriate to this time of year, and the Stanley Cup playoffs. We are not yet hoisting the cup. We got the Devils, but the Knicks also won last night against the Cavs, so we've also got basketball playoffs, NBA, so lots of sport metaphors. But however, with the budget proposal put forth this year, the governor has put us on a path to a new future in New Jersey, one that ensures that any New Jerseyan who wants to make a home here, own a business here, or raise a family here can afford to do so. So I want to thank you for inviting me again to join you this morning. I'm glad to see some take your kids to work day here, and happy to take a few questions if you have some.